The unassuming passenger. The main hall of Los Angeles International Airport buzzed with its usual vibrant chaos. Streams of people hurried past, a river of rolling suitcases and anxious glances at departure boards. Amidst this swirling energy, a man moved with a surprising, calm confidence. He wasn't dressed for attention, just an old black t-shirt, comfortable jeans, well-worn sneakers. No flashy watch, no designer logos. This was John Cena, navigating the terminal with an air of quiet purpose. A few curious eyes flickered towards him, perhaps sensing a familiar presence. But most travelers, caught in their own journeys, didn't recognize the global superstar. He simply blended in, preferring anonymity over fanfare. He possessed an unassuming demeanor that seemed almost out of place in the high-gloss environment of international travel. He moved with an undeniable certainty towards the first-class gate. There, he presented his ticket to the flight attendant, Svetlana, and stepped into the priority line. As he moved, the subtle glint of a silver crucifix, small and understated against his dark shirt, caught the artificial lights of the airport. It seemed less like jewelry and more like a part of him. Svetlana glanced down at the boarding pass. The name John Cena was clearly printed. Her eyes widened slightly in recognition, but then her expression shifted. A slight furrow appeared on her brow as her gaze flickered from the famous name to the man standing before her. The simple clothes, the lack of entourage. She hesitated, a silent judgment clouding her professional smile. "Sir, I think you might be at the wrong gate," she said, her voice smooth but carrying an edge of doubt. "This line is designated for first-class passengers." John met her gaze evenly, no trace of offense in his expression. His voice was calm, steady. "I assure you, I'm exactly where I need to be." Svetlana checked the ticket again, confirming his identity. She knew who John Cena was, of course, but the reality didn't quite match the expectation. His casual attire, the worn sneakers, the absence of any visible celebrity swagger, it didn't fit the profile she usually encountered in the premium cabin. Even after verifying the name, her hesitation lingered, a quiet bias showing in her eyes. She finally nodded, allowing him to pass, but her gaze followed him, laced with a mixture of confusion and unease as he walked down the jet bridge. The symbol and the spark. John Cena strode leisurely down the corridor, settling into his spacious first-class seat with practiced ease, as if he'd done it 1,000 times before. Svetlana, however, couldn't shake her initial surprise. She watched him adjust his seatbelt. As he did, the small silver crucifix shifted slightly, resting clearly against his shirt. Her eyes fixed on the tiny symbol. A flicker of something, tension, perhaps disapproval, crossed her face, but she quickly suppressed it, maintaining her professional composure. She took a step forward, then another, following him down the aisle with firm, almost rehearsed steps. Her expression had subtly hardened, becoming more deliberate. Something inside her had shifted. Inside the first-class cabin, the air was cool and crisp, the lighting dimmed to a comfortable glow. The gentle hum of the aircraft preparing for departure created an almost therapeutic atmosphere. John sat peacefully in his seat, arms resting on the padded armrests. He wasn't reading, wasn't watching a screen. He seemed entirely present in the moment, a quiet pillar of calm. The silver cross rested perfectly centered on his plain black shirt. It wasn't ostentatious or new. It looked worn, loved, as if it held countless untold stories within its simple form. Despite its modesty, the cross seemed to carry an unexpected weight. From the galley entrance, Svetlana watched him discreetly. She peeked into the aisle just enough to keep him in her line of sight. She'd dealt with celebrities before, demanding actors, aloof musicians, flashy business tycoons. John Cena didn't fit any of those molds. He was quiet, self-contained, unapologetically himself. Yet, something about him, or perhaps specifically the necklace, sparked an unsettling feeling within her, a sense of dissonance she couldn't quite name. As the plane reached cruising altitude, she approached his seat, her posture measured, professional, the poise practiced in countless training seminars. This cabin, this flight, was her domain, and she was determined to maintain its perceived order. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice low but firm, leaning slightly towards him. "I need to address something." John turned his head slowly, his expression open, waiting. "Is there a problem?" "It's not about breaking rules precisely," Svetlana clarified, her gaze flicking towards the crucifix, though she avoided pointing directly. "It's about maintaining a neutral environment for all passengers. Some individuals might feel uncomfortable with overt religious symbolism in a shared space like this cabin. We ask that passengers exercise discretion." John glanced down at the crucifix, his fingers briefly touching it. He looked back at her, his voice remaining steady, betraying only mild surprise. "Discretion? I've flown countless times wearing this. No one has ever raised an issue before." "Well, times are changing, sir," Svetlana replied, her tone hardening slightly. "Policies evolve." He didn't react with anger, nor did he immediately comply. "This crucifix," he stated simply, his voice resonating with quiet conviction, "is not merely a symbol. It's a part of my personal faith, a reminder." Across the aisle, a woman subtly glanced up, tuning into the conversation. A man 2 rows back slowly removed one earbud. A subtle tension began to ripple through the air. Not loud, not chaotic, but undeniably present. Svetlana forced a tight, professional smile, the kind used to diffuse, not connect. "Of course, sir, we respect personal beliefs. We simply ask that personal expressions remain discreet, especially in our premium cabins." John's brow furrowed slightly. "Excuse me, but I feel like I'm being singled out here. Would you ask someone to hide a pendant of a tree, a star, or a simple stone?" "Protocol and principle." Svetlana blinked, momentarily thrown off balance by his direct question. Instead of answering, she cleared her throat. "Sir, this necklace," John continued, his voice gaining a quiet intensity. "It's been with me through more than you can imagine. It's seen war zones, hospital rooms, nights when faith was the only thing I had left. It's not for show." His voice wasn't loud, but it filled the space like thunder in a quiet cathedral. For the first time, a flicker of genuine frustration broke through Svetlana's customer service mask. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but visible to those nearby. Passengers exchanged glances. Silent opinions began to form. The man who had removed his earbud discreetly angled his phone, resting it on his lap, the lens pointed towards the aisle. Someone whispered to their companion, Is that really John Cena?" John seemed not to notice the shifting dynamics, or perhaps he chose to ignore them. He wasn't trying to create a scene. He was simply standing his ground, holding onto something deeply personal. Svetlana, however, felt her control slipping. She straightened her posture, trying to reassert her authority through sheer presence. Her eyes met his with a newfound, though brittle, resolve. "Sir," she said, her tone becoming sharper, colder, "I must insist. Please place the necklace under your shirt or remove it for the duration of the flight." John looked at her steadily. "With all due respect, no, I won't hide it." The plane hummed along at cruising altitude. Outside, the sky was a brilliant, indifferent blue. Inside, the gentle clinking of champagne flutes and the murmur of quiet conversations seemed distant, muffled by the focused energy in this corner of the cabin. Svetlana's steps became quicker, more rigid as she moved away briefly, then returned, her expression tight. "Sir," she repeated, her voice taut, "I have received comments from other passengers. They are feeling uneasy." Whether this was true or a tactic was unclear. The display of ideological symbols in a shared, enclosed environment can make people uncomfortable. John leaned forward slightly, his voice still low but carrying a deliberate clarity. "Perhaps the issue isn't the symbol itself, Svetlana. Perhaps it's the way people have been conditioned to react to it." His words hung in the air. The couple nearby exchanged another look. The man with the phone continued recording, unnoticed. Svetlana took a shallow breath, trying a different tack. "Imagine if everyone started wearing political pins, religious icons. It could create tension." "Are you comparing personal faith to a political campaign?" John asked, not aggressively, but with genuine inquiry. Svetlana felt cornered. She fell back on the final resort, protocol. "Sir, I'm following procedure. If you refuse to cooperate," she paused for effect, "I may have to notify the captain and potentially involve airport security upon landing." Now, all nearby eyes were undeniably on John Cena. He didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked Svetlana directly in the eyes, his gaze unwavering. "Call whoever you need to call," he said, his voice quiet but resonant. "But please understand this. The problem isn't what's on my chest. It's what might be in your eyes." Svetlana stared back, momentarily silenced, caught in the unexpected mirror he held up, not with judgment, but with stark clarity. She stepped back, her jaw clenched. She didn't know it yet, but the tide in the cabin was turning. Another flight attendant, Elena, further back, paused mid-task, watching. The couple continued filming. A few passengers subtly nodded in John's direction, though none spoke aloud. A divide was forming, not between faiths or ideologies, but between perception and reality. Authority and understanding. The undercurrent of tension in the first-class cabin had solidified into something palpable. Postures straightened, whispers grew more deliberate, monitoring became more vigilant. John Cena remained in his seat, composed, the silver crucifix resting quietly against his chest, seemingly unaffected by the storm brewing around him. Svetlana, however, stood in the galley, her jaw tight, her professional mask crumbling under the weight of the confrontation. Irritation had morphed into a defiant challenge, but now doubt began to creep in. She felt judged by the famous passenger, by the silent onlookers, perhaps even by her own junior colleague, Elena. The uniform suddenly felt heavy around her collar. She tapped nervously on the tablet attached to her service cart. Taking a deep breath, she turned sharply to Elena. "I need you up front with me, now." The younger attendant blinked, confused. "Is everything all right, Sveta?" "Passenger in 2A is refusing to comply with a direct request regarding cabin decorum," Svetlana stated formally, avoiding Elena's questioning gaze. "I've asked him multiple times to conceal a religious item that could be perceived as disruptive. He declined and is escalating the situation." "But is it really that disruptive?" Elena asked hesitantly. "It's just a small cross, isn't it?" "It's about setting a precedent, Elena. It's about procedure." Svetlana snapped, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Reluctantly, Elena followed her back towards the front cabin. Meanwhile, near John's row, passengers feigned nonchalance, eyes fixed on books or screens, yet acutely aware. The man near the bulkhead continued his discreet recording. Svetlana returned to John's side, her posture even more rigid than before. Elena stood slightly behind her, an uneasy observer. "Mr. Cena," Svetlana said, using his full name for emphasis, "I am formally notifying you that if you continue to disregard cabin expectations, I will inform the captain. We will have to take further measures, potentially involving airport security upon landing." The words sounded official, rehearsed, but landed awkwardly in the charged silence. More passengers were openly listening now. There was no shouting, no overt scene, just the undeniable weight of an escalating confrontation. Elena spoke gently, intervening before Svetlana could continue. Maybe we should speak with the captain together first, before things escalate further?" Svetlana shot her a sharp, disapproving look, but it was too late. The dynamic had shifted. Svetlana had tried to assert authority, but somehow she had lost control of the narrative. She spun around and hurried towards the cockpit. "Captain," Svetlana reported breathlessly, upon reaching the front galley where Captain Delgado was conferring with another crew member. "Sir, we have a passenger in first class, John Cena, who is refusing to comply with basic decorum standards. I've asked him repeatedly to conceal a religious item. He claims it could disturb the cabin atmosphere. He declined, and frankly, sir, he's being quite defiant." Captain Delgado, a man with a calm demeanor and kind eyes set in a weathered face, listened patiently. Then, without immediate comment, he walked calmly down the aisle towards first class. He approached John's seat, hands clasped loosely behind his back, projecting quiet authority. "Mr. Cena," he began, his voice calm and respectful. "I'm Captain Delgado. I understand there's been some disagreement regarding cabin policy." He paused. "My primary goal is the safety and comfort of everyone on board, passengers and crew. May I ask for your perspective on the situation?" John met the captain's gaze, his own posture relaxed but respectful. He gently touched the crucifix. "Captain," he started, his voice steady, "I was asked by the flight attendant, Svetlana, to hide this cross, citing concerns it might offend others or violate policy." He paused, letting the silence settle for a beat. "I explained to her that this necklace has been part of my life for many, many years. It isn't an ideological statement. It's a symbol of personal faith that has seen me through incredibly difficult times. I don't wear it provocatively. I wear it as a quiet reminder that I'm still here." The cabin was so quiet, you could hear the distant click of a seatbelt buckle 3 rows back. Captain Delgado listened intently, his gaze shifting briefly toward Svetlana, who stood stiffly nearby, then to Elena, who gave a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of her head, seemingly disagreeing with Svetlana's assessment. The captain turned back to John. He didn't make a ruling immediately. Instead, he addressed the cabin, his voice carrying clearly but gently. "This airline prides itself on inclusivity and respecting the personal beliefs of everyone on board. We believe in the freedom to express faith respectfully, without fear or shame. We expect everyone, crew included, to uphold these values." It was subtle, yet unmistakable. Svetlana felt a flush creep up her neck. Her phone, tucked in her pocket, vibrated silently. She didn't need to look. In that moment, she somehow knew the video was already out there. Her words, her tone, her confrontation with John Cena over his crucifix being dissected by strangers across the globe. Her chest tightened, not just with panic, but with a dawning, profound shame. It wasn't just about the potential backlash. Seeing the situation reflected in the captain's measured response, in Elena's quiet dissent, and in John Cena's unwavering dignity, she finally saw her own actions clearly. Protocols and policies felt like flimsy shields now. Redemption and reflection. The walk from the galley back to seat 2A felt impossibly long for Svetlana. Cabin lights glinted off polished surfaces and the curious eyes of passengers who watched her slow approach. An expectant silence fell over the first-class cabin. John Cena sat quietly, composed as ever, the silver crucifix still visible against his shirt. He hadn't gloated, hadn't pressed his advantage. His simple, quiet strength somehow made what she had to do even harder, yet more necessary. Her steps faltered slightly as she stopped beside his seat. Then, in a move that stunned the onlookers, Svetlana slowly knelt beside his chair. A collective, quiet gasp rippled through the cabin. "Mr. Cena, John," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, trembling slightly. I was wrong." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up at him. "I told myself I was protecting the cabin, upholding standards, being professional. But that wasn't the truth. The truth is, I let my own discomfort, my own biases, dictate my actions. I judged you, and I am so sorry." John looked down at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then a profound kindness softened his features. He gently reached out and offered her his hand. Still trembling, Svetlana took his hand and allowed him to help her stand. Her professional mask was gone, replaced by an openness, a vulnerability she hadn't shown, perhaps hadn't felt, since she first put on the uniform. She looked lost. I don't know how to undo what I did," she whispered, the shame still heavy in her voice. John held her gaze, his grip firm but gentle. "You don't need to undo it, Svetlana," he said, his voice low and kind. He released her hand. "You faced it. Right here, right now. That takes more courage than most people ever find." Svetlana nodded, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. She stood there for a moment, the rigid posture gone, the performance over. "I used to believe in something," she said softly, almost to herself. "Before this job, before the rules, the scripts, the fear." In that moment, John Cena chose grace over righteous anger, quiet faith over loud vindication. The flight attendant, mid-flight, had offered a genuine apology, and the world, unknowingly yet, was watching through a small phone lens. But for Svetlana, the potential articles and viral videos suddenly didn't matter. Something far more significant had shifted within her. 2 weeks later, Svetlana sat in her modest apartment, the city lights distant outside her window. She faced her phone, recording a video not for an airline or an audience, but for herself. She wore a simple t-shirt. Around her neck rested a small silver crucifix, identical to the one John wore. He had quietly gifted it to her as they deplaned, a silent gesture of understanding. She looked directly into the lens, her gaze clear. "For years," she began, her voice steady, "I believed that professionalism meant hiding parts of myself, following the rules even when my heart questioned them." She paused, her fingers brushing the cross. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. "Today, I don't hide anymore." She took a breath. "Thank you, John." She ended the recording and sat in the quiet stillness, clutching the cross. It wasn't just a religious symbol anymore. It was a reminder of a confrontation on a flight, yes, but more importantly, a reminder of the unexpected strength found in vulnerability and the profound power of choosing compassion over control. For the first time in a long time, Svetlana felt whole.